Welcome back, everyone, to the Fat Guys and Friends podcast, the last of our NFL division previews. I am your co-host, Colton Bartholomew, and with me, as always, is good friend and fellow fat man, Mr. Logan Wanger. Wang, how you doing today, friend?
I'm doing pretty well. I made you intro that segment because I had to walk and go get other headphones, and I was out of breath and didn't want to sound super fat in the opening.
Yeah, just one of the sad realities of how we live our lives. But fuck them.
We did it to ourselves.
That's right. And I'm not that ashamed about it, in all honesty.
Nope.
All right. Today we are previewing the NFC North. It is the last division we have to do. We were saving it for last because we were hoping to get some more friends on, because being here in the Midwest, this is the division of the Midwest. But work schedules and, people having lives and other crap going on kind of screwed that up. But
yeah, we're not very likable.
And we're not likable. I mean, we have a small friend group as it is. So, anyways, the NFC North, which includes the Detroit Lions, Chicago Bears, Minnesota Vikings, and Green Bay Packers. We'll talk about some overall predictions on their team and kind of our general feel about them heading into the season, which starts this weekend. Thank God, Wang.
It's time. I'm tired. We've talked about on previous podcasts having to go through the Olympics, which aren't sports, having to do with non-playoff baseball, which is barely a sport. I mean, we had the NBA Finals for a while, which was cool, but it's been gone for so long. We need football. Football's back. Thank God.
Yes. And even though my Red Sox are in a pennant race, I still am much more excited about football than I am September baseball. So, let's jump right into it here. We'll start off with the Minnesota Vikings. They've been in the news most recently with starting quarterback Teddy Bridgewater suffering a gruesome non-contact injury to his left knee. What was a dislocated knee, torn ACL, almost lost a... Potentially, from what I've read, he could have lost the leg had the trainers not got it, fixed as much as they could on the field right away.
My question is, how do you do that not getting touched? What the hell did his leg do that it caved in that bad?
I'm with you, man. I mean, it's one of those freak things where it's... and it was on a simple drop back, so something he's probably done a million times, literally a million times in his life with no injuries, and then for whatever reason, knee just explodes.
Yeah, I mean, people tear their ACLs all the time on contact injuries, but those non-contact injuries where your knee just buckles in a weird way, it's scary to think about.
Yeah. It really shows the fragileness of not just a professional career, but I mean that could happen to you and me walking left or right.
Yeah,
that's just a freak accident that your body just gives up on you.
Yeah, and more force on our knees is not good. So it's probably going to happen to us tomorrow.
Definitely not. But as we talk about the Vikings here, Wang, why don't you tell us their acquisitions and departures?
Really, their key acquisition, which just happened a mere days ago, is Sam Bradford. They gave up a first and a fourth round pick, which I'm sure you and I will talk about later. They also signed Andre Smith and Alex Boone, both offensive linemen, to shore up their offensive line to try and protect what they thought was going to be Teddy Bridgewater. And really, their only loss was Mike Wallace from free agency. And I also put Teddy Bridgewater in a loss because from the way they're talking, it might be a 2-year injury the way his knee is.
Oh yeah, definitely. It sounds more like it's going to be a full year of rehab just to get ready to get ready. You know what I mean? It's going to take preparation for him to be able to practice, and that's not even getting ready to play in an NFL game. So you're right. This definitely could be a 2-year or a year and a half thing where we're not going to see Bridgewater in helmet and shoulder pads till mid next year potentially.
Yeah, the fact that this happened at the end of training camp didn't do the Vikings or Bridgewater's any favors.
Yeah, just terrible, terrible luck on their part. But, let's talk about Bradford here. You mentioned they gave up a first and a fourth rounder. At first glance, I got to say I was pretty shocked by it, and I thought it was a bad move.
Same.
Because I think Sam Bradford is what he is. There's really not much more upside to him. I think the NFL has seen what he is, and that is a mediocre to good quarterback. I don't think his ceiling is great. I think his ceiling is good.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
And, maybe like a good mid-level quarterback is what Sam Bradford could be. So I'm looking at it at first. It's like, why would you give up all that for that guy? But then I start looking at it a little further, and it's like, okay, the Vikings are as good as they think they're going to be. Their first-round pick is going to be in the mid to late 20s. They already have 8 other picks in the draft, even though they gave up 2. And then they basically got back what Teddy Bridgewater is, because Bridgewater is a average to good quarterback at best.
Yeah,
so
I would say Bridgewater is better than Sam Bradford, but they're both just game managers, really. I mean, Bridgewater can make more plays with his legs, and he usually doesn't make the bad play as much as Bradford does. But they are very similar in their play styles.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what they were going for. And I will give Spielman, the Vikings general manager, credit. He looks at his roster. He thinks they can win right now, and he wasn't going to let them waste a year of a lot of these young guys, up-and-coming cheap contract years on a year with Sean Hill at quarterback. So I will commend him on that. At least he tried. Because there are a lot of GMs that would just sit there and be like, oh, we'll roll with the backup.
Yeah, and what this really tells you is that the Vikings like their team this year. They wouldn't give away a first-round pick and a fourth-round pick if they thought they didn't have a shot of going deep into the NFC playoffs. Because
for sure,
they were a missed kick last year away from beating the Seahawks.
Yeah, I mean, they should have been down in Carolina for the divisional round.
Exactly.
Potentially getting piss pounded, who knows? But I think they should have been there.
Yeah, and they already have a good team in place. I mean, they have the timeless wonder that is Adrian Peterson. You think he's going to eventually slow down, but I don't think it's going to be this year. Their defense is very good. They have an up-and-coming receiver in Stephon Diggs. They had to make a move, and I think the main reason they made the move is you can't open up a new stadium and trot out Sean Hill to take the first snap.
I completely agree. Nobody will ever admit it because, the NFL doesn't act like being able to sell out your home games is that big of a deal. But you're so right. When you took taxpayer money to help get that stadium built, then you got to put a good product out there. And expecting Sean Hill to win them games wasn't going to be a good idea.
Basically, the best-kept secret in sports is that they don't want to win; they want to make money. And you make more money by winning.
For sure, winning just helps you make money.
Exactly, but their main goal is making money.
For sure. And, you mentioned Adrian Peterson. Let's start there. Obviously, he's going to be, no matter who was the quarterback for this team, they could have Aaron Rodgers and Adrian Peterson still be the focal point. That's how good he is. You mentioned, eventually he'll slow down, but I think what they finally realized last year is Adrian Peterson is who he is. He is a downhill, one-cut runner that is arguably the best ever at that skill set.
And the other thing I love with what they do with Peterson is he hasn't touched the ball in the preseason since he's come back from his ACL injury. Because he doesn't need to.
Yeah, and I mean, there was talk this year that Peterson wanted to play some preseason, but the coaches and I think the general managers were like, nah, you're good. You'll figure it out.
You don't need
But, I like the fact that they finally transitioned from trying to make him be a guy that can catch out of the backfield and do all these other things into just saying, you know what, you're going to be out there first and second down, you're going to be pounding away, and you're going to do Adrian Peterson things, and then when we need to throw, we're going to bring in Jerick McKinnon, your backup, or we're going to bring in other guys because you're just not good at that stuff.
Which is weird to think that Adrian Peterson isn't a complete running back, but he's not good in the pass game for whatever reason. He never really has been.
For sure. He is limited in the aspects of like that total all-around running back that we see in today's NFL, but in just straight up, single back handoff, 7 yards behind the line of scrimmage, nobody's better.
No, not. I don't think there's been anybody better than him in the past decade, easily.
No, definitely not. I mean, just really a one-of-a-kind guy. He always gets compared to guys like Eric Dickerson because of the way he runs so upright and just bowling over guys, and there hasn't been anybody since Dickerson that can sustain what Peterson does. And to that end, you mentioned in their acquisitions, they go out and get Alex Boone and Andre Smith to shore up that offensive line. I love those two moves
Two
especially
top-level
Smith at
offensive
right
line.
tackle with the retirement of Phil Loholt, a guy that their coach Mike Zimmer knows from his days in Cincinnati. Just really solid guys to go along with some other good guys they have on their line.
But yeah, you were right. They're two top-tier offensive linemen. Boone is one of the better guards in the league. Smith is probably going to play right tackle for him. It's something they need to do because Bradford has proven that he is pretty fragile himself. So eventually they could be trotting Sean Hill out there.
Yeah, for sure. And you never can trust Sam Bradford to start all 16 games. I think he's done it once in his career. So, yeah, to think that you can go out there with an okay line and get it done, just not possible. But they finally gave their offense some weapons on the outside. Stephon Diggs kind of had an up-and-coming year last season. They drafted Laquan Treadwell out of Ole Miss. Do you feel like that receiving core is going to be enough to at least contend? Obviously, the focus is going to be on Peterson no matter what, but at least make some plays in the passing game?
If Treadwell can be the type of player he was at Ole Miss, which receivers almost never translate over in their rookie seasons, but if really they need a number two. I think Diggs stepped up and proved that he can be close to a number one receiver, and then if Treadwell can step up and be the number two, and then they have Kyle Rudolph at tight end, who's very talented that people don't really talk about. So Bradford should have enough weapons to try and contend now, because I think a lot of people are having the Vikings, if not winning the division, being right there and getting a wild card in the NFC. So now Bradford is going to need help from his weapons, because Bridgewater doesn't really make people better, but it's almost like Bradford makes people worse. In a weird way.
You're not wrong. I mean, there's not a lot of evidence that says Sam Bradford's a phenomenal quarterback either way.
He doesn't elevate guys to be the best player they can be.
No. Yeah, I think you're right. With the talent they have, he should be able to at least let them live up to their talent as opposed to dragging them down. At least Vikings fans hope so. Switching over to their defense here, obviously a guy like Mike Zimmer being the head coach, D coordinator in the league for so long over in Cincinnati, a really good defensive coordinator, somehow built this defense that was really old and aging after that, Brett Favre little stint in Minnesota. A very old defense quickly turned over into one of the better young core defenses in the league. Let's start at their linebackers, Wang. Outside of Chad Greenway, who is pretty much on his last season, and he's admitted as much, you've got Eric Kendricks and Anthony Barr at the other two linebacker spots. I can't really name a more complete set of linebackers in the league outside of maybe Carolina with Kuechly and Davis.
Yeah, Anthony Barr might be the best kept secret in the NFL on the defensive side of the football. Nobody really talks about this guy, and all he does is make plays.
Definitely. And you add in the fact that you've got a free safety like Harrison Smith, who I think ended up being like one of the top 10 or top 15 rated players by Pro Football Focus last season. And they're a site that just, pours over every game and is really exact in the way it can figure out how good and how effective a guy is being for a team. So a lot to like on this defense. Do you feel like they have the pass rush that they're going to need to slow down guys like Aaron Rodgers in their own division and when they get to the playoffs and the other quarterbacks they'll face?
Probably not, just because they do have to play Rodgers twice a year. Even when it comes to Cutler and Stafford, they can both get the ball out of their hands very quickly, because Rodgers will run around and make plays, and Stafford and Cutler, outside of the boneheaded plays that Cutler will make off and on, but they both get the ball out of their hands very quickly. So their front line needs to get to the ball or get to the quarterback without blitzing, and they can't really do that an awful lot.
Yeah, I mean, they have very solid front four guys. I agree with you. Linval Joseph and Sharif Floyd at the tackle spots, and then Brian Robson Robeson and Everson Griffin at the end spots. They're good guys. They haven't risen to that spot where they're like elite pass rushers yet, but I feel like they're at least going to be able to be serviceable, if not good.
Which is all they really need to be when they have the linebacking core and and even the secondary, like you mentioned with Smith, he's probably the best free safety in the league. And like I mentioned about Anthony Bard, one of the better, probably the best up-and-coming linebacker right now.
Definitely. Will be interesting to see if Terrence Newman can continue being that old man savvy cornerback opposite Xavier Rhodes on the other side. But Terrence Newman's been in the league. I think this is his 14th year, so eventually speed's gonna pass him by. But he seems to be able to be crafty enough to continue covering guys,
which is really all you need him to do. I mean, as long as the speed is okay enough to keep up with guys until he gets safety help over the top, you just need him to shut him down for 5 to 7 yards.
This is very true. All right, let's jump to our record predictions for the Vikings here. Kind of sounds like you and I are going to be in the same vein on this one. I've got the Vikings, and I actually made this prediction before the Bridgewater news, but even afterwards, I still kind of feel the same way about them. I feel like they're going to have a similar year to last year. They're going to we're going to lose some games that they should have won, and I feel like they're going to seal a couple that they should have lost. And I feel like they're going to be right around 10-6, or I've got them down 11-5, so I'll stick with that 11-5 for the Vikings.
I changed my prediction with the Bridgewater injury. I originally had them going 11-5 and winning the division, but I have since changed. I still think they're going to be good. I think Bradford will do enough to win them the games they're supposed to win. So I have them now coming in at 9-7, but getting the number 6 seed in the NFC playoffs.
All right, we will move on to a team that is near and dear to a lot of people's hearts in my hometown, and that includes one of my best friends, Mr. Matt Schefke, a friend of the podcast, was on the WWE draft special we did. Matt, how are you, friend?
I'm doing good, ready to talk about the Bears.
The Bears it is. We were talking about the Chicago Bears, who, coming off, would you call it last season a disappointment, or did you kind of know it was going to be that way early on?
I think it was right around everybody's expectations. Actually, they started to get a little bit hot. They had like a 3-game win streak going in the middle of a season that everybody had already thought was a foregone conclusion. And then they ended up being what we thought they were at the very end. So nothing really stood out as far as expectations were concerned.
All right, so we're coming off what you expected when you got a new staff, new coach, and got to retool the roster. But as you'll hear when Wang lists off the acquisitions, they've definitely made some moves. Wang, who'd they bring in?
The biggest move was on defense. They added Danny Trevathan over from your Denver Broncos.
Yep.
They shored up the backup quarterback position by bringing in Brian Hoyer. But they did lose 2 big parts on their offense, losing veteran running back Matt Forte and trading away tight end Martellus Bennett.
They did. Matt, obviously, through the draft, too, picked up a couple of good guys that are going to be key players and have their first-round draft pick from last year in Kevin White, finally, hopefully coming back from injury and getting on the field. Let's stick with the defense first. What is it? So the second year under John Fox now. Typically improves the defense faster than he improves the offense. Do you see good things coming from this defense this year?
I think they shored up this defense into potentially, if everybody can stay healthy, possibly one of the better front sevens that you see in the league. Linebacker, which was a huge issue last season. I see them being now going from the weakest point to the strongest position group on that defense. With the acquisitions of Danny Trevathan and Jarrell Freeman. Mm-hmm. You've got Pernell McPhee on the outside. Other outside linebackers, probably going to be Lamar Houston on first and second downs. As I've said time and time again, Leonard Floyd, his first season as a rookie, their number one or first-round draft pick, he'll probably work in on some sub-packages to try and rush the passer. He's going to be a big question mark, but really one of their glaring stats from last season was how bad their run defense was. And I think they really did a good job in the offseason with making those free agent signings, and then through the draft as well to kind of plug up the middle. They're going to be a much better run defense, and I think overall just improve as an entire unit.
For sure, and I mean, you look at Danny Trevathan's guys. He's an undersized guy, kind of, but just has a nose for the ball and always is an on-run game. And then, like you mentioned, getting some bigger guys up front. And it's always tough when you're switching philosophies on defense because you build for how many years under Trestman for a smaller, fast defensive front, and now you've got to quickly switch over to John Fox, who wants to plug up the middle. So.
Well, and remember, they had a defense where, in John Fox's first season, you had pieces to the wrong puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
You had Jared Allen. You had basically everything that they had been building for the previous 2 years for a 4-3 defense. They switch over to a 3-4. They tried to do some creative things. It just didn't work, and I think they needed that in their first year. The new regime, Ryan Pace as the general manager, and then John Fox and his coaching staff. I think they really needed to play around with some of the players and personnel that they had so that they could find the best fits, see what worked, see what didn't work. And so now I think this is the year that they're going to take things a little bit more seriously.
I hear you there. And John Fox has a track record when he took over Carolina, took over Denver, and we'll see what happens with the Bears. But he's got a good track record in year 2, really making a jump up on the field and wins. I can't remember what the exact stat was, but the Broncos increased in 4 games up to their win count. Obviously, Peyton Manning had a big deal to do with that too, but I think it was 6 games for the Panthers from year 1 to year 2 for John Fox. So got the track record for being able to get a team turned around.
Let's hope.
You mentioned the front 7 a lot there, obviously switching from that 4-3 to 3-4. What are they looking like in the deep backfield?
We were just talking about this, and honestly, I'm not as overly concerned with that position group as I am with a couple of others. I think they're going to be okay. They've got the veteran presence there, and Kyle Fuller again. He still has to live up to his potential. Tracy Porter was the name I was thinking of for the corner opposite of him. Obviously, they've got some young safeties in there, but I think that's a good thing. If they end up, being what all the analysts say that they have the potential of being, I think it could be possibly a good position group for them. If not, at least serviceable for this season until they can find other options elsewhere.
All right. Let's move over to the offensive side of the ball, who unfortunately are going to have another new offensive coordinator, which has kind of been the tail of the tape every year for the Jay Cutler era, changing systems all the time.
Yep.
Hopefully not too much of a system change. I believe since Adam Gase left, it is the quarterbacks coach that got promoted.
Yeah, Dowell Loggins, who used to be the coach, I don't think head coach, offensive coordinator for the Browns, I think is where he came over from. So.
Yep.
All right, so hopefully not a ton of change because Cutler at times last year, you mentioned they went on a run, had some nice wins, beat Kansas City on that kind of last fluke play, but ended up working out. Had a couple of runs where they looked good, and Cutler was keeping interceptions down, which is a godsend for him. That's his biggest weakness. Do you feel like Jay Cutler might have a similar type season, or are we going to see the Jay Cutler of old where he's tossing around?
Statistically, one of the better seasons of his career, and I think you touched on it too. It's got to be tough to be a quarterback in the league, and just in general. But not only that, since he arrived in 2009, that's been about 7 seasons. I think he's had 6 different offensive coordinators. They're having to learn a new playbook pretty much every single year, or at least some changes to the playbook that they've been calling. So it can't be easy. The maturity for Jay has come a long ways, and I think that depending on what happens with their wide receiver group, I think Jay Cutler could be in for a better season than last year. Okay. Obviously, subtracting Matt Forte from the run game doesn't help at all, but I think they were missing a lot of key pieces on offense, and what he was still able to put together without their number 1, 2, and 3 wide receivers for almost the entire season was still, I dare to say, impressive a little bit. I would say, at least.
I hear you there. Jumping over to receivers quick. Jumping over receivers, Alshon Jeffrey not happy with his contract situation. He's got the franchise tag this year, I believe, and all indications are pointing that he's going to be gone.
Alshon Jeffrey, they're on a prove-it basis with him. If you look again at the stats for last season, he missed 9 games because of several different injuries. That's more than half the season. In those games that he did play, however, he still managed to get 807 receiving yards on just 7 games. So still pretty impressive when he was on the field. But again, they're wanting him to prove it that he deserves that long-term contract and that he can stay healthy for the entire season to contribute to the team before they make any kind of big deal for him.
Interesting. We'll see if that ends up playing out for him, because if he does have a big year, I could see him being a guy fetching a little bit more money than the Bears are willing to give up for a wide receiver.
It's possible, and that's why they went out and they drafted a receiver last year with the idea that essentially it could shake out this way. But depending how Kevin White ends up this season too, we might be okay. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Wang, you got anything?
No, not really. He's covered pretty much everything I was thinking.
And Matty guys, we got obviously a Bear legend. Not going to go down maybe as high as some of the other Bear legendary running backs, but God, he was good for about a decade for him. Matt Forte gone. How do you feel about the guys that are going to be stepping in for him this year?
Again, this kind of goes back to John Fox's MO. He's always liked having the running back by committee sort of style to him. You've got the guy, Jeremy Langford, who had a couple of pretty stellar games last season filling in for Matt Forte. He's going to be their number one for the future. You've got Kadeem Carey backing him up. You should see Howard, the rookie out of Indiana, right behind him as the third down bruiser back. So I think they pretty much have all the tools that they need, but Matt Forte was the complete package. You can't replace a guy of that caliber. It's sad to see him go. Obviously, as a Bears fan, I'm biased. But I'm not just a Bears fan. I'm a huge Matt Forte fan, and everything that he's done on and off the field, he's just got a lot of character. And so it was sad to see him go, but I think what they're trying to do here now is a little bit different than what we were doing in the past with Matt Forte. So it had to be done, and I think I think they're going to be okay. But again, it's going to be a lot of we'll see type of deals this season.
I hear you there. All right, let's jump into record predictions for the Chicago Bears. Tough division, obviously. You've got two of the NFC's better teams potentially in Green Bay and Minnesota in this team, or in this division, I should say. Wang, let's jump to you first. How do you see the Bears season shaking out?
I think you hit the nail on the head. It's the fact that they play in one of the tougher divisions in football. I've always been a Jay Cutler, I don't want to say fan, but I don't think he's as awful as he is when he plays the Green Bay Packers every season. Just for whatever reason, he's god-awful against the Packers, and I feel so bad for you Bears fans, because you got to take so much shit when he plays the Packers. But I do think they'll be okay, maybe a little below okay. I have them coming in at 7-9 this season.
Okay, all right. Any big upsets or bad losses you see on the horizon?
Not really. I think they'll win the games they're supposed to win and lose the games they're supposed to lose.
Okay. I'm not far away from you there. I have them down here at 9-7. I think that this train of John Fox really figuring the team out and improving is going to continue. They have some tough stretches in the schedule, especially right in that October area. Going to have to go on the road to face the Colts. They host Jacksonville, and we talked in the AFC South podcast. Jacksonville could be one of those teams that surprises everybody this year. And with their offensive weapons, I don't like the Bears secondary against them in that game. But I think the Bears have kind of that same up and down season that they saw last year, Matt, but a longer stretch of up. especially later on in the year. A couple of winnable games right back-to-back at home against Tennessee and San Fran, which can really get the Bears going in a positive direction heading into this offseason.
And
Matty Ice,
I agree.
Your
with
team. I don't know if we insulted you. You've been quiet. You didn't say anything when we set our records. All right, what do you got?
I'm listening to you. I'm taking notes. You guys are both well educated, well versed in the art of football. I'm going to agree. I've got them going 9-7 as well. A couple things that I do want to point out is that they do have the second easiest strength of schedule going into the season. They play the entire AFC South division as well as the NFC East, which could really make or break. I mean, you've got so many question marks here against teams who you don't know if they're going to show up or if Dallas just keeps standing out to me. I don't know why. What Dallas team are we going to see? What Giants team are we going to see? So there's a lot of question marks on here. Actually, I kind of looking at it, the October, I think they get a pretty good deal. You've got Green Bay. You're at Green Bay for the Thursday night color game. And then you have until the 31st, which is a Monday night game against the Minnesota Vikings at home. So you've kind of got a little bit more of a cushion there between the Thursday night and then coming in on the Monday night. Right afterwards, you've got a bye week, and then you're going to Tampa Bay. So, there's a lot of factors that are going to determine. Again, you guys both hit the nail on the head with the NFC North being one of the tougher divisions, as they are almost every year. So, again, I think it's fair to say 9-7. Would I be surprised if they lost a few more? No. Would I be impressed if they won a few more? Absolutely. Always cheer for that.
Sure. All right. That wraps up our Bears coverage here, Matt. Thank you for jumping on.
Thank you both for having me.
And moving on from the Chicago Bears, we will now go over to their biggest rivals, the Green Bay Packers. They didn't really do much in the offseason, Bart. Not a whole lot being done. They added Jared Cook, a talented tight end, to hopefully take the place of Jermichael Finley that they had a few years ago before he broke his back. And then on the defensive side of the ball, they didn't add anybody, but they lost two pretty big players. They lost Casey Hayward, a very talented corner, to the Chargers. And B.J. Rossi decided he didn't want to play football anymore.
Yeah, and then even more recently, they let Josh Sitton, one of their all-pro guards, walk. Or they released him. So that was kind of a shocker in the last round of cuts for them. And then they drafted Blake Martinez. That was one of their kind of not splashier, but one of their more important draft picks because he's going to need to play inside linebacker and allow Clay Matthews to get back outside. Kind of that classic Packer way of going about it, where they just are going to rely on the draft, pretty much neglect free agency, no matter what the team needs, and they're going to roll with what they pick in drafts.
Yeah, Packers never really make any sort of splash. The last splash I remember making is when they brought in Charles Woodson.
Yeah, it really was. It was Reggie White first and then Charles Woodson. Whatever, it was like 15 years in between them. But yeah, those are the two biggest moves they ever made. Granted, both of them panned out to be key players on Super Bowl teams. But yeah, they never really make any splashes or make too much of an attempt to bolster through free agency for whatever reason.
That's what happened when you let your idiot fans be your owner.
Yeah, let's stop pretending like the Packers are cool. I hate the Packers. I hate living up here with all these fucking Packer fans. My God, they're the worst.
I mean, I will respect the franchise and I will respect the players because they have good teams almost always.
I'll give you that.
But I'm not going to say all your fans, but most of your fans are pieces of shit.
God, they're so dumb. My God.
Seriously.
Packer fans, they can't admit that the Packers do anything wrong. If if they're like the 90% of the majority of Packer fans, they just act like everything the Packers are doing is right, no matter how dumb it is on the surface.
I mean, you mentioned it in our NFC South preview when we talked about the Saints. Sean Payton made one bonehead move that happened to work. Packers make a lot of bonehead moves, and a few of them end up working, but some of them don't. And people don't talk about the ones that don't.
No. And I want to get into a bonehead move I think they made. This Josh Sitton release doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I understand they did it a lot for the money issues, even though they're not excuse me, even though they're not really up against the cap anywhere. They've got other places that they didn't spend money that they've left to make sure that they could protect Aaron Rodgers. So then why would you allow a guy who is that good as Josh Sitton is just to leave? Not only that, let him go to the Bears, who he ended up signing with. And most importantly, he was one of the most popular guys in the locker room. That is just a bad thing to start your season off with. Oh, by the way, Josh Sitton's gone.
Yeah, and players are mad about it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, some of the players are like, we don't know why he got released. We're mad that he got released. Like you said, he's one of the more popular guys in the locker room. Just a baffling move by the Packers.
Agreed, and especially with when you've got a guy like Rodgers who can make so many plays outside the pocket, having that pocket created at least is so important. That to mess up the chemistry and the ability that trio of TJ Lang on the right side, JC Treader at center, and then Josh Sitton had. Like, it makes no sense to me outside of saving a little money.
Exactly, and it's not like the Packers had a top-flight offensive line. I mean, they've had their struggles, and Sitton was almost the glue that was holding them together.
Yeah, that front three, with all the injuries they've had at tackle spots. I mean, Brian Bulaga can't stay on the field for more than 4 or 5 games at a time. It's really shocking that they allowed that guy that good to leave, especially when obviously a lot of the attention coming into the season for the Packers being on Jordy Nelson coming back. He hasn't played a competitive down football for over a year. It's going to take him a game or two at least to be full go in condition to play.
Exactly, but all these Packer fans just remember Jordy Nelson running up and down the field in 2015, or 2014, excuse me, he didn't play last year. Just making all these plays, and he was. I mean, when you got Aaron Rodgers throwing you the ball, and you have the talent that Jordy Nelson possesses, you're going to be a good wide receiver, and he was one of the top 5 wide receivers in 2014. You can't argue that.
No, I agree.
But old players, and Jordy Nelson is old. I think he's either 30 or 31 years old. They don't come back from ACL injuries and be the same player. It just doesn't happen nowadays. And even if he's going to be anything close, like you said, it's going to take a little while to get used to it. I am baffled that Mike McCarthy didn't throw him in at least the 4th preseason game. Just have him play a series. Have him play 2 series. I know you're a little gun-shy to put him back out there because he tore his ACL in the preseason last year. But the guy's got to see the field.
Yeah, I'm with you too. I think if I were the coach, I probably would have gotten him a couple of reps. But I'm with you too, where it's defensible at least to just say, screw it. If he's going to get hurt again, it's going to be in a game that matters. Let's talk about somebody that's near and dear to our hearts as fat guys. Eddie Lacy.
Oh,
man.
Cheeseburger Eddie.
Eddie Lacy should have just came into camp fatter than last year and just given Mike McCarthy and Packer Nation the big old middle fingers because screw it.
Eddie Lacy went to Alabama when I don't think they've ever heard that you could deep fry cheese. He probably didn't know that was a thing. He gets drafted by the Packers, has a cheese curd, says, oh my God, I need 600 more of these, which you can't blame the fella.
No.
So eats a whole bunch of them, gets super fat, has a bad season. But you know what he should have done is just learn how to play fat. Because people can do it. Jerome Bettis was a big guy. He's in the Hall of Fame now. Just learn how to carry the weight, Eddie.
Yeah, see, Eddie, listen, you got to listen to us, not that loser Doc Horton, that P90X guy that you live with. Screw
Fuck
that
guy.
Okay? You need to just learn how to be fat.
And you need to learn how to be fat. There's an art to being fat for sure.
As 2 experts on the topic, we can tell you, Eddie Lacy, you didn't do it right last year. You let it affect your work. That's rule number 1. Can't do that.
Yeah, the main, like the number 1 rule of being fat is never wear a gray t-shirt in public.
Also true.
I think that's number 1, and never sit in anything wicker.
Oh.
Probably the top two things.
Yeah,
I can't
mean,
think anymore at the top of my head.
we need to get Eddie Lacy on the podcast just to talk him through this clearly.
Yeah.
However, speaking just in general for the Packer running backs, you've got to assume that James Starks is going to get some more carries this season. I mean, he was very good when it became apparent that Lacy couldn't handle the load he did a season before. I can't imagine the Packers are going into this season not thinking about giving Starks some more carries.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to be a 50-50 split because Lacy is still the better running back. But I wouldn't be surprised to see a 70-30 or even a 60-40 split because Starks proved last season he can be a reliable running back. He's not obviously, like I said, he doesn't possess the talent that Lacy did.
Yeah, and he has some fumble issues.
Exactly. The ball security issues, but catching the ball out of the backfield and getting first downs, he was able to do that a decent amount for the Packers last year.
For sure. And let's flip over to the Packers defense here. I want to start in their secondary because I honestly believe they have an underrated secondary. It's because none of their guys were, high draft picks or really well-known guys in the college ranks. Maybe Clinton Dix just because he played at Alabama. But they've got some really solid guys in the secondary that have played, I would say, above either their pay grades or the kind of their name recognition would say so.
I would agree. I mean, I think we have to agree that Clinton Dix might have the best name in sports.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't care if it's just a nickname that he just stuck. I love it. I love that he wrote it out all this way, and now, on his jersey, it can say
Exactly. But you are right. The Packers secondary doesn't really get talked about, and you're probably right because they're not really big names. Besides Clinton Dix, I don't think anybody was taken near the first round.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But I'm sure we'll get angry Packer friends telling us where we're wrong. But fuck you guys too.
I can't wait for that.
I like Shields. I like Demarius Randall. He had a good season last year. Quentin Rollins playing nickel and playing some different kind of almost walk down safety at times. Then you pair that up with the pass rush that the combo of Julius Peppers and Clay Matthews can give you once Clay Matthews gets back outside this season. I think as much of dumb moves the Packers make, finally getting Clay Matthews back to being pretty much a pass rusher, that's their smartest move they can make.
Yeah, Clay Matthews is not an inside linebacker. That was one of the dumbest experiments they ever did. Plus, it's not like he was ever playing bad on the outside. I mean, he had his struggles, but any player is going to go through a down period. He's one of the better pass rushers in the league. Probably the best white pass rusher in the league. I know we like to point out race on this show because it's fun. But I don't think there's a better white, long-haired pass rusher in the league.
Yeah, J.J. Watt is white, but
that's why I said
long-haired. I like it. Nice qualifier.
Yeah.
I know that they moved Matthews inside because they were having such problems with the run game, and he was able to help with his athleticism. But when you're playing out of position like that and you're taking those hits, that just shortens the career and the effectiveness of the career of a guy like Clay Matthews, and that's bad business right there.
Yeah, in playing middle linebacker, you have to do more, or not more, but different in the passing schemes. Mm-hmm. And he proved that he cannot cover the middle of the field the way he can cover the flats when he plays outside linebacker.
For sure. And just looking at their front there, Mike Daniels, who I believe is on the cover of Sports Illustrated this week or something. So he'll tear his ACL. Good call, everybody. Yeah. Way to just curse the man.
Happens. Couldn't have happened to a better organization.
Exactly. Oh, man. All right. Let's jump into their record prediction here. And as much as we don't like them, I feel like we're going to agree on how good they're going to be.
But they're still good.
Yeah. All right. Wayne, why don't you go first?
I know we talked about how the Bridgewater injury affected the Vikings. I think the Bridgewater injury affects the Packers as well. Because I originally had the Vikings sweeping the Packers, and that's how they got to their 11-5 season. But now with the Bridgewater injury, I don't think the Vikings are going to beat the Packers at all. So that shifts the Packers from going 9-7 to coming in at 11-5 in my book and being the number 3 seed in the NFC playoffs.
Gotcha. Had they gotten Jordy Nelson some reps, and I could be convinced that he's going to be back to form, I would think that the Packers are going to be 13-3 because they have one of the more favorable schedules in the league this year. But I don't know that, and I feel like the shakeup they made on their offensive line is going to affect them in a couple of games at least, or it's going to affect some running game stuff. So I've got them going 12-4, and I'm with you. It was actually originally 11-5, but before the Vikings lost Bridgewater, and they're having to shuffle Sam Bradford in for the first week. Potentially Sam Bradford's first game as the quarterback for the Vikings is that Week 2 game between the Packers and the Vikings. That's tough.
Which could be scary.
Yeah. So, as I was saying, I've got them now going 12-4, winning the division, and they will end up being the number 3 seed in the NFC playoffs.
Whew. You are high in the NFC.
We are. I think there are more terrible teams in the NFC. So then all the good teams are going to get wins against them. Like we talked about on an earlier podcast, the Seahawks and the Cardinals. I think they're going to beat up on the Rams and the 49ers all year. And then the North gets to play the NFC East, and I believe it is the
AFC South.
Yeah, exactly.
Easily the two worst divisions of football.
Yeah. Neither one strikes fear any place. So, Packers 12-4, 3 seed.
Let's get to the last team in the division, which could turn into a dumpster fire, which is the Detroit Lions.
Oh, poor Detroit, man.
I know they had a little run of success, didn't do a whole lot, and now
they had that season. What they end up going that year, like 12-4, 11-5, making the playoffs. Got screwed out of that playoff game by the refs, and then they just blew up.
Poor fellas. In the offseason, they added Stephen Ridley, Marvin Jones, and Haloti Ngata, and also traded for John Bostic. But they had the worst loss of this offseason. Calvin Johnson retiring at the ripe age of 30. Just
tragic.
Poor Detroit.
My God. If you just take the two first ballot Hall of Fame guys that have played in Detroit and retired young, my God. Barry Sanders walks away 20 years ago. Calvin Johnson, who last season, aside from some nagging injuries, was still one of the best players in the league, just says, I'm done with this football thing. And
yeah, both in the prime of their careers.
Yeah, I mean,
without a shadow of a doubt.
It's just
Barry
rough.
Barry Sanders could have ran for another 5-7 years easily. It could have shattered Walter Payton's.
Yeah, and made it so Emmitt Smith couldn't play long enough to cheaply break it.
Yeah, couldn't break the record with a gray beard like a fuck. But even if Calvin Johnson could have, I don't know about another 7 years because the NFL has changed so much and he's taken some brutal hits like everybody else. But he could have played 3 to 4 more years.
Oh, at a high level.
Sure. Yeah, and Ben, even if he's not top 5, he's not leaving the top 10.
No, and the thing is, with his size mismatch, even when he lost a little bit of a step, Stafford always just threw it up to him and let him go get it. That was the thing that Calvin Johnson
never had
did.
Blazing speed.
Yeah.
Because he didn't need it.
Yeah.
When you're 6'6", 6'7", you're not a speed guy.
It's crazy when you think about Calvin, like two of the premier wide receivers, big, strong physical wide receivers in the last 5 years in the NFL. Calvin Johnson and Demaryius Thomas out in Denver went to Georgia Tech, a triple option where they're the only receiver.
That's probably where some of their skill comes from, because they were the only receiver, so they were the only option.
True. It's just crazy to think that two of the bigger physical mismatches went and played at a triple option school.
Yeah, it just shows you how good they both are, especially Calvin Johnson, where all they would do if they didn't run that stupid triple option, they would just throw it up and hope for the best. And Calvin Johnson proved that he was the best.
Yeah. But, as we mentioned, poor Megatron, he left. Poor Detroit. This is going to be rough, man. We don't need to get into it. They just don't have a ton of talent. They got Amir Abdullah out of Nebraska being the first string running back and as the kick returner. That's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, you don't do that.
No. There's a reason that kick returners are backups at other positions.
Yeah, so if they get hurt, it doesn't fuck over your offense or defense.
Yeah, and then they brought in Anquan Bolden to try to bolster some of the receiving core. Yikes, man. Bolden's lost it. And I like Anquan Bolden. He's a tough dude, but he's just not there anymore.
Yeah, not the guy you want to see at number 1 on the depth chart anymore.
And they still have Golden Tate, but Golden Tate is at number 2 if there's ever been one. And it's going to be interesting to see what he gets when he finally has to play number 1 corners. And over on the defense for them, they have a couple of good players. You know, Ziggy Ansah on the defensive line, he's really good. DeAndre Levy. They paid Darius Slay like he's a phenomenal cornerback, which I only saw him play one game last year, and that was against Denver when Demaryius Thomas ripped the ball out of his hands and walked into the end zone before halftime. So, rough goings for Detroit. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I don't even think we really need to say much more. I think everybody's in agreement that Detroit's not going to be good this year.
Agreed. All right. What do you have for the record prediction?
I think I was pretty generous with everything we've just said. I have the Lions not as the worst team in all of football, but right at the bottom of the league, coming in at 4-12 on the season.
We are in exact agreement, just because of I think the schedule the NFC North got this year. They have some very winnable games. I have them beating Tennessee at home. I had them beating Los Angeles at home. I think they're going to steal one somewhere in this stretch where they have Washington at home, Jacksonville at home, something like that. Maybe a Bears game they split. Who knows? They'll sneak out 4, maybe 5 wins, and yeah, like you said, drafting the top 5 to 10 picks.
Yeah, so not very good for the Lions. So to recap our NFC North predictions, I have the Packers winning the division, coming in at 11-5 on the season. Vikings getting past the Teddy Bridgewater injury and still making the playoffs, getting the 6th seed at 9-7. The Bears being improved this season, coming in at 7-9, and the dumpster fire in Detroit is back with the Lions at 4-12.
Yep, I have the exact same order. You already heard the records. Let's jump into how you can contact us. We are on the Twitter machine, which is at Fat Guys N like Nancy Friends. You can watch all of our podcasts and listen to them on YouTube. Just search our channel, which is Fat Guys and Friends. You can email us, fatguysandfriends@gmail.com. Definitely not enough emails. We appreciate the Harambe love, but let's bolster that inbox. And then because of Wang's mastery of the internet, you can also find us on iTunes. So you can like, download, and subscribe. Get all your stuff onto your phone and listen to it in your car or wherever else.
Internet good.
Wang, we did it, man. NFL previews.
We picked every game of every team for the entire 2016 season.
We sure did. And we also spent like 9 hours recording because we lost an hour with one of our friends' recordings did not working. Another one recorded, then couldn't send it. We had some bad luck with these, but we had some fun too.
Yeah, and now we sit back and watch how fucking wrong we are.
Yeah,
for the entire season.
That's the best part about all of this, because we like to think we know what the hell we're talking about, but we don't. At the end of the day,
but now
we like to.
Now
but
the best part is the next time we do a podcast, we're going to be talking about stuff that's happened and not what we think is going to happen.
Oh, I know, it's going to be great. And to just give you guys a heads up on what we're thinking, hopefully get a recap of the week that was in the NFL up by Monday or Tuesday, then try to give you a preview by Thursday or Friday. Give you some betting advice for any of the degenerates out there like myself. Be doing a lot of betting this year. Had a lot of fun doing that last season, so look out for that. And then our usual bullshitting and talking about wrestling and doing everything else.
And just being fat.
And advice on how to be fat, because listen, if you want to know how, you got to come to some experts. And you have that here on the Fat Guys and Friends podcast.
For sure. If we're experts in anything, it's being fat and making bomb-ass nachos.
See? The things you can learn. All right, everyone. Thank you for listening. Have fun watching football. Hooray, it is back.
Goodbye.